Hi everyone, welcome back to Footsphere. Why Manchester United are keeping Erik ten Hag as manager as contract talks begin. Erik ten Hag's future at Man United was in doubt after a poor season, but the Dutchman has been backed to remain in charge. Manchester United have decided to keep Erik ten Hag as manager after conducting a lengthy review into the season. Ten Hag enjoyed an excellent first year in Manchester, but United struggled last season and finished 8th in the Premier League, leading to uncertainty around his future. United won the FA Cup against Manchester City to salvage something from an otherwise bleak campaign, and it took 17 days after that game for a decision to be communicated. Club sources confirmed late on Tuesday night that Ten Hag will remain in charge and that talks have opened with the Dutchman over the extension of his contract. It's understood INEOS officials have recognized the achievement of winning 2 trophies in 2 seasons, and Ten Hag has been given a vote of confidence to continue as manager. The ability to deliver trophies in an environment that has challenged former United managers has been a feather in Ten Hag's cap, and other factors have been considered. Ten Hag's work with developing young players has been looked upon advantageously. The 54-year-old has overseen the progress of youngsters Alejandro Garnacho and Kobbie Mainoo, and both players scored in the FA Cup final triumph against City. United feel Ten Hag has particularly excelled with youngsters at the club, which they hope has created potential for the squad to improve in next season and beyond. Following the conclusion of the season review, club insiders believe there have been serious mitigations for last term's underperformance in the Premier League. United finished the campaign with a -goal difference, and in the Champions League. Ten Hag was forced to contend with an unrelenting injury crisis throughout the campaign, and the review concluded injuries were concentrated in key positions. Lisandro Martinez, Rafael Varane, Harry Maguire, Luke Shaw, Tyrell Malacia, Johnny Evans, and Aaron Wan-Bissaka all spent time on the sidelines with injuries. The season review also determined that recent signings, like Andre Onana, Rasmus Højlund, and Mason Mount, were made with a long-term vision. Ten Hag has spent over £400 million and has received the heaviest backing of any manager in the post-Sir Alex Ferguson era, but recruitment has continued to be an issue. Those reasons have been factored into United's decision to keep Ten Hag in charge, and it's understood staff were reluctant to make a knee-jerk decision on his future. But there are still questions for INEOS and Ratcliffe's football structure to answer. United have considered sacking Ten Hag and have contacted other managers. Kieran McKenna was sounded out before the FA Cup final, and Thomas Tuchel held talks with Ratcliffe in Monaco. McKenna signed a long-term contract with Ipswich, and Tuchel's name was withdrawn from the race earlier this week. The lack of alternatives to Ten Hag has strengthened his case. Many considered Ten Hag's position as untenable due to the length of the season review, and felt he'd been undermined by United contacting other managers. United suffered a record number of defeats in a Premier League season, and conceded their most goals in a campaign. Ten Hag oversaw a total of 19 defeats across all competitions in 2023-24, and that was the joint most since 1977-78, when United finished 10th in the table. It's hoped opening contract talks with Ten Hag over a new deal will end the discussion around his future. Ten Hag has just entered the final year of his contract at Old Trafford, and United could not give him a vote of confidence to continue without handing him a new deal. The transfer window for Premier League opens on Friday, and United can now push ahead with their summer transfer plans. Man United have put Erik ten Hag on trial with Omar Berrada and one other set to be judge and jury. Erik ten Hag is staying as Man United manager, but the club's end-of-season review didn't categorically deliver the conclusion that he was the right man for the job. After what Manchester United sources described as a more thorough review than usual at the end of the season, they have decided to stick rather than twist. Erik ten Hag will remain as the club's manager into 2024-25. Labeling this a more thorough review than usual is certainly one way of looking at it. No other club courted other managers before deciding to keep the one they currently had. Presumably, that won't be the INEOS modus operandi every summer. It's been a mess since the FA Cup final was won, and the reason they are sticking with Ten Hag is that they couldn't find a replacement they were truly convinced by. So the 54-year-old, winner of 2 trophies in 2 seasons, stays on, but the events have significantly weakened his position since May 25. Ten Hag has taken charge of 114 matches as United manager, but he heads into his 3rd season at the club on trial. He might yet sign a new contract, but we all know contracts don't really make a jot of difference. INEOS aren't convinced by him and he has to deliver quickly to make sure he lasts in this job into 2025. It's there in some of the language being used to talk about the end-of-season review. Nobody has said that it concluded that the Dutchman was the best man for the job, or that if this had been a process starting from scratch he would have got the gig. Instead, the talk is that he deserves a chance to show what more he is capable of within the new sporting structure we are building. Translation: you've got one more chance and it needs to be better than what we've seen so far. That's not an unreasonable demand, but it makes it clear to absolutely everyone, players within the squad, potential new signings, managers hunting for a new job, that Ten Hag's position still isn't one of strength. In the politics of a football club and a dressing room, having a manager whose position has been weakened is never ideal. Keeping a squad of 25 senior professionals happy and signing on the same hymn sheet is hard enough already. That isn't to say that this is purely delaying the inevitable. Ten Hag knows a start like last season would almost certainly spell the end, but if the new campaign begins well and he starts to show that the mitigation he presented to remain in a job was valid, then the missteps of the last few weeks will fade. If he has a fully fit squad to work with, if Mason Mount starts to show his value, if Andre Onana and Rasmus Højlund continue to kick on, then perhaps results will improve. There have certainly been moments over the last 2 years when Ten Hag has looked capable of delivering what United require. Wembley last month was the most vivid example of that yet. The supporters will certainly back this call. The matchgoers never turned against Ten Hag and admired the discipline he has brought to the playing group. He will get a lusty reception when he sets foot out of the Old Trafford tunnel in August. And maybe the change in football structure will help Ten Hag. He has new faces to work with, and while he stands out as being the only man in any real power to have survived the INEOS cult, he has the opportunity to forge new relationships with Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Sir Jim Brailsford, and as he has been doing over the last few weeks, with Jason Wilcox. Chief Executive Omar Berrada starts work next month, and perhaps most crucially of all, Ten Hag needs to build a strong relationship with Dan Ashworth, pictured above with Berrada and Ratcliffe, when he finally takes up the post of sporting director. It is Ashworth who will be the primary kingmaker when it comes to future appointments. If Ten Hag wins him over, then he will feel more secure. But for now, he has seen the people who appointed him in the first place, Richard Arnold and John Murtagh, depart, and it is unmistakable that INEOS have ripped almost the entire football structure, except for the manager, and that wasn't for the want of trying. They held talks with several candidates to replace Ten Hag, but were unconvinced by all of them. That was entirely predictable because there never looked to be a ready-made replacement. The danger now for Ten Hag is that Gareth Southgate departs the England job after a successful European Championship, which really would raise the stakes at the start of the season for the United boss. But after returning from an end-of-season holiday, he will be happy to be in a job rather than looking for a new one. In this game, jobs don't come much bigger than this. If Ten Hag steps back from the brink and delivers further success to the club, then he will go down as a hero amongst the fans. But he is on the back foot to achieve that and needs a good start to the new season. Sir Jim Ratcliffe and INEOS have listened to Roy Keane amid Erik Ten Hag Man United decision. Erik Ten Hag will continue as Manchester United manager after INEOS completed their end-of-season review. Manchester United have made a decision on the future of Erik Ten Hag months after icon Roy Keane called on the Dutchman to be given more time. The 54-year-old has faced an uncertain future at Old Trafford after United endured their worst top-flight campaign in 30 years, as they finished 8th in the Premier League. Ten Hag did steer United to a second piece of silverware during his tenure as they won the FA Cup, thanks to the 2-1 win over Manchester City. In light of the triumph, the Dutchman was spiky in his post-match press conference but has faced scrutiny over his future since their success at Wembley. However, United have made the decision to keep faith in the former Ajax boss as they gear up for the new era under co-owner Sir Jim Ratcliffe and INEOS. Former United midfielder Keane spoke in May on the uncertainty surrounding Ten Hag. He said, "I hope he's given more time. He's an experienced manager. It's certainly not easy getting interviewed after the game where the stats for this team are so bad, in terms of the record defeats, where they are in the table, their struggles in Europe. Yeah, they have a cup final coming up in a few weeks. It's a tough interview." He's trying to stay positive. Tough questions he has been asked about the players behind him. Is he tactically up to it? Is he tactically up to it? I would like to think so. I think there has been genuine problems at the club. The injuries, he's pretty honest with that side of it. But the more games you are losing, and when you are 8th in the table, I suppose you end up losing that belief. But I would never sit in the studio and think, I hope the manager should lose his job, or anything like that. I hope he is given more time. When they get to the summer, they can regroup and restructure the club, whatever that may be. There are huge problems at the club, but I hope he is given a chance to get things right, because last year there were some positives, you have to be honest with that. But there are huge challenges coming up and he is under huge pressure. Erik ten Hag must now tell Sir Jim Ratcliffe the same thing he told the Glazers at Man United. Man United manager Erik ten Hag has often addressed the need for strength in depth at Old Trafford, following last month's 2-1 win over Manchester City in the FA Cup final at Wembley. Manchester United will participate in the Europa League for a second time in 3 seasons next term. They will do so with Erik ten Hag at the helm. The Dutchman has been kept on as manager after a thorough review by INEOS, which concluded with the news that, despite the speculation, the 54-year-old will be given then chance to lead United into a new era. United failed to secure European qualification for 2024-25 after finishing 8th in the Premier League table. It marked their lowest ever finish in the Premier League era. However, United knew they had a second bite of the European cherry and would do so with a win over City. Goals from Alejandro Garnacho and Kobbie Mainoo sealed a Europa League berth, relegating Chelsea to the Conference League and denying Newcastle United a spot in Europe altogether. It arguably kept ten Hag in a job too. As a result, United could play up to 67 matches in all competitions next season. Should United require the knockout round, they could play up to 17 games in the Europa League alone. With injuries having been a big problem throughout the 2023-24 campaign, there is no denying that United need as much strength in depth as possible. The Reds have been guilty of stockpiling players in recent years, meaning their squad has a bloated feel to it, but the difference in quality between their regular starters and those in the reserve trench is quite striking, highlighted by their 8th-placed finish. United need a better level of quality in reserve, and that is why this summer's transfer window is so important. A lorry load of changes need to be made, but much of it rests on the funds they can generate through player sales. But to ensure United have the right level of depth available to them, they also need to get the right balance. Anthony Martial's impending exit will leave United with just one out-and-out striker in the form of Rasmus Højlund. Elsewhere, unless United decide to trigger the option to sign Sofyan Amrabat permanently, his return to Fiorentina will leave them with just one defensive midfielder in the form of Casemiro, who could be sold this summer. If the former returns to Italy and Casemiro is sold, United will need 2 defensive midfielders. United manager Ten Hag, who has been confirmed as staying at the club, addressed the need for having 2 defensive midfielders after Amrabat signed last September. A few months earlier, the Dutchman had already highlighted the importance of having 2 players in each position. Speaking in April 2023, Ten Hag said, "If the squad is so strong that you have in every position double the same quality, then it's good." He added, "I think the players are, to a certain point, very capable, and we have players in the squad who can really take the load of so many games. But when you play a lot of games, and the load is getting higher, you need to rotate because you have to keep the players fit and fresh." Ten Hag, understandably, cited United's injury crisis for their downfall in the most recent campaign, claiming ahead of the FA Cup semi-final win over Coventry City that he had only been able to name his strongest starting 11 once in 18 months. The Reds were battered by injury issues throughout 2023-24, regularly forcing Ten Hag to put square pegs into round holes. Diogo Dalot often had to operate at left-back, Casemiro was tasked with operating as a makeshift centre-back, and Bruno Fernandes had to play up front, to name just a few examples. With sufficient depth available, United may have been able to avoid those scenarios. It means, ahead of the transfer window opening on Friday, INEOS have already been served with a warning for what they must try and achieve over the next 2 months or so, now that Ten Hag is staying in position. United's level of depth needs to improve, as does the balance of the squad.